Hi, my name is Ian Sowell, and thanks for joining me today. I'm a member of an organization called the Promise America Alliance, or PAA for short, a non-profit organization. I hope what I have to say is of interest, thought-provoking, and above all, I can persuade you to help with our work. But first, I trust you and your families are well and staying safe from the pandemic sweeping our country and around the world. Despite the horrific toll this crisis has and continues to wreak in terms of unnecessary deaths and economic pain, we believe it offers the United States and the world a unique opportunity to effect positive and much needed change. This is the basis for our initiative. And this is the first sharing of what I hope will be many by myself and others, and perhaps you. The Promise America Initiative, or Alliance as it has become known, actually started some years back, and while relevant then, has, as a result of this crisis, become far more relevant today. It started when a group of us across a variety of disciplines, particularly academia and business, began to discuss and address what we saw as a serious lack of cohesive vision or purpose for our nation, coupled with extreme political polarization. So allow me to share a few details of that initiative and what we hope to accomplish. I'll start with a little in the way of background and then cover some of our basic thinking and describe some of the work already completed. I'll talk briefly about how this relates to the current crisis and finish with a few suggested next steps. So to begin with, the Promise America Alliance was founded by two individuals. Richard Cheshire is chairman and founder. Dick was the former president of the University of Tampa and vice president for the Center for Strategic and International Studies. His latest book is First and Foremost, based on three prior books relevant to the subject being discussed today. Arthur Rayshap is our president and COO. He has had a multifaceted career ranging from Wall Street lawyer and investment banker to government roles supporting arts organizations for New York City and New York State. He also served as counsel to the Rockefeller family. Believing we had drifted from the founding principles and values as outlined in the preamble to the Constitution, the objectives we had at Promise America were to change how we think about our well-being and to introduce a new measurement tool called the Promise America Report that would once again give voice to we the people. In our work and that of others, we found that while multiple issues ranging from climate change, abortion, gun control, income inequality, voting rights, and healthcare have been much discussed and debated, it seems that we here in the United States, and like many Western countries, had to an excessive degree boiled the well-being of our nation down to one metric, GDP, or gross domestic product, a simplistic measure of economic activity. If GDP was going up, all was well. If it was going down, things were bad. As many others have written, and while of some value, GDP is totally inadequate as a measure of our well-being and of course fraught with numerous contradictions. We could spend an hour on this subject alone, and there is much discussion that is centered around this topic. But simply put, its inadequacy as a measure of well-being has never been clearer than today, as the world grapples with the greatest crisis since World War II, and perhaps longer since this one touches every country and every person in the world, rich and poor, democratic and autocratic, religious and non-religious. Today, the well-being of our nation is literally that, our well-being, our health. The fact that our GDP was the highest in the world has no real bearing on the degree of pain and suffering we are currently experiencing. At another time, we can focus on subjects like climate change, whether man-made or not, that it is now having and will continue to have an enormous impact on our well-being over and above the simple economics of GDP. Basic freedoms such as the ability to vote and to gather together have now been threatened. Things we took for granted just a few weeks ago have been taken away, perhaps for a long time. And as the pandemic continues, the very foundation of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food, shelter, and safety, are at risk for millions. So as the old saying goes, never let a crisis go to waste. When things are going well, no one wants to change or even sees the need to change. Often the danger is too far in the future to warrant taking the risk. I experienced this multiple times during my business career and my personal life, and learned that the best, in fact the easiest time to effect change is during a crisis. So what should we change? How can we take advantage of the crisis we now face? At the Promise America Alliance, we believed well before this crisis hit us that we needed a new, well-defined vision for the nation, akin to, but even broader than Kennedy's "we will go to the moon" decree of over 50 years ago. And we identified the need for appropriate metrics to measure how we were doing against that vision. For this to happen, we needed strong leadership who would be held accountable for their actions in accordance with this vision. Obviously, this is no easy task and incredibly complex. Where does one even begin? We believe there are three fundamental elements to the process. The first is the creation of a vision. On the surface, this is a daunting challenge, but we believe a good starting point lies in our Constitution, and more specifically with the 52 words of the preamble. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. In these 52 words, the Founding Fathers established the basic purpose of our nation, a vision, if you will, against which we could measure our well-being. Imagine, if you will, a nation whose people feel that a strong sense of justice prevails, feel safe and well protected, have good jobs where hard work, skills, and perseverance are rewarded unrelated to your sex, race, or color of your skin, who enjoy the freedoms inherent in the Bill of Rights and perhaps above all, live with a view to making things better for their children and for future generations, our posterity. Of course, we have never fully achieved that vision, but there were probably times when we were closer than others, and in our opinion, certainly closer than where we are today. As a vision, is it perfect? Probably not. And given that it was written by a bunch of old white guys 250 years ago, needs updating. But it is a start, and even as it stands, provides a framework around which policies can be written, actions taken, and measurements made for how well we are performing. Assuming policies and actions are taken, the second step brings us to measurements. As mentioned earlier, GDP, or gross domestic product, while of some value, is on its own an inadequate measure of well-being. And back in 2010, Congress agreed. As part of the bill that has become known as Obamacare, Congress approved the mechanism to create a key national indicator or index, charged with measuring and reporting on a broad range of subjects, somewhat similar to those covered within the preamble: justice, defense, general welfare, etc. Unfortunately, the $70 million authorized was not appropriated, and while the idea has floundered, it has not died. Other countries and several international organizations have, however, implemented their own key indicators to look beyond simple GDP as a measure of well-being. Some are quite objective and thorough, including those used at the OECD, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. Others are more subjective in nature. For example, the Gross National Happiness Index, or GNH, that originated in Bhutan. It has literally become fundamental to and guides the policies of the government of Bhutan. Here in the United States, organizations such as usafacts.org, started by former Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer, do an amazing job of collecting and disseminating huge amounts of government data. It is also organized around the principles of the preamble. Professionally managed, its strength lies in its independence and terrific organization of the vast amounts of data available. Its two primary weaknesses, however, are that it does not track data beyond that collected by the government, including information, for example, that is related to climate change. Here at PAA, despite some obvious reservations about the role of government and our firm belief that the key national indicator index should be strictly independent and bipartisan, for it to have teeth and be acted upon, it must be housed within the federal government. And it must become as important as GDP, reported on regularly and openly. This then leads to the third step or element of the process. We believe the vision and these measurements should be used to hold our leaders accountable for their actions and policies, from the local all the way to the national level of government. It may even form the basis of the annual State of the Union address and act as a framework for measuring the effectiveness of all three branches of government. All of this may sound like a daunting or perhaps impossible challenge, but in fact it is eminently doable, and much work has already been done and continues to be done. At Promise America, we have been working with the University of Virginia, with students and their advisors from the Data Engineering Department, to develop a model for the metrics and even definitions for what a well-being index may look like and how it may be used to affect policy decisions. The pillars set forth in the preamble are to be used as the standards or key elements of well-being, but updated where needed. For example, a study conducted last year by our students indicated that a strong sense of community was a key measure of well-being, as high as, if not higher than, the more traditional or standard choices of income and wealth. If chosen as a key element or metric, and then demanded by people, the same way we demand better jobs or income, it isn't hard to envision how policy decisions at the local all the way to the national level could be designed in support of this goal. It does not automatically mean we achieve it, but at least we'd be doing what we the people want. We the people, how novel. We've also worked with the Centre for the Constitution at Montpellier and with academics in the fields of political science to better understand the roots of our nation's purpose and how best to make it relevant to today's world. And we are planning a symposium or forum later this year, subject to the pandemic in terms of its format, to bring together academics, politicians, scientists, business leaders, and others to further discuss what might constitute elements critical to well-being, how best to measure these, and to what extent the government plays a role in their attainment. All very meaty topics. But back to the current pandemic and what comes next. What we've learned and how does it fit with the initiative here at PAA? First, it has become apparent that some countries have handled the situation better than others. Those who acted swiftly with a clear plan of action and with the processes in place to test, track, and treat have fared best, including Taiwan, South Korea, New Zealand, and to some extent Germany. Those who didn't, Italy, France, Spain, the UK, and sadly the US, are suffering more. The importance of data, or in many cases the lack of data, has become a critical factor in how well we manage the crisis. And anyone who has worked in business knows making good decisions without data is impossible. Within the US at least, we have seen and experienced the relative importance and role of leadership at the local, state and national level. The role and relative power and influence of key institutions such as the media, the judiciary, CDC, FEMA, the Federal Reserve, to name just a few. There will be books and papers written on this for years to come, with any number of varying opinions as to what happened, how and why. But what we do know is that the crisis has unearthed many cracks in our social fabric, here and around the world. In the US, it has further highlighted the fragility of our healthcare system, the impact of income and race inequality, our dependence on a global supply chain for critical materials, and of course our need for social interaction. The list is very long. Yet, in the midst of chaos, fear, and in some quarters animosity, we have also seen incredible acts of kindness, courage, and even human sacrifice demonstrated both within and across borders. Countries often at odds with one another have offered help. Scientists across the world are sharing information in search of a cure or vaccine. Neighbours are reaching out to neighbours to help. We are, without doubt, all in this together. We've only just entered phase 1 or possibly phase 2 of the pandemic, as some countries continue to see a rise in infections and deaths, while a few are starting to see a downturn in the numbers. But for a successful phase 3 and the safe reopening of the world, it will require the unprecedented cooperation of us all, at the local, state, national, and international level. It is here that the opportunity lies. Understanding, acting upon, and measuring what we as a nation and as a world truly value as part of our well-being has never been more important. As I said earlier, there are opportunities to turn this crisis into something good, and hopefully the lessons learned, both positive and negative, will result in a better tomorrow. What might we as a nation look like at the other side of this? Will we simply go back to acting like nothing happened? Or will we demand changes to the way we think about our nation's well-being? And if we want change, then the time to act is now, while our thoughts are focused on what is truly important to us, including that sense of community and the role we want government to play going forward. So having given you a little background, shared some of the work we've completed, related it to the current situation, and posed the question of what comes after, let's talk about those next steps. How will you think and act differently, if at all, following this crisis? What do you think might or should change as a result? Again, this is hopefully just the start of a longer dialogue. So my ask today is simply that you add your thoughts and comments to this blog and support us with your own skills and knowledge as we further the initiative for a clearer sense of direction and accountability for our nation, and through these actions, a renewed leadership for the world. You can read more about our work at www.thepromiseamericaalliance.org and www.promiseamericaalliance.net. You can also find our Facebook page at Promise America Alliance and see what we've been up to. Dr. Cheshire's book is also available on Amazon and through iUniverse via a print or electronic copy. Thank you for listening, and with your help, I look forward to continuing this important work. Until next time, stay safe. Thank you.